Welcome back, Caddy Corner episode 42. I'm Austin.
I'm Caleb.
And I didn't smoke that intro 2 seconds ago. We are back yet again with another podcast like we have been for 41 previous weeks. How about that?
Pretty impressive.
First of all, welcome. Also, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, review the show. Do all of that stuff. It really helps out. Thanks so much to everybody who's already done that. Thank you for viewing the podcast. We really appreciate it. Share it around with all your friends and family and pets. Why not? They might like the podcast.
Yeah.
We haven't tried the podcast on any pets, I don't think.
No, but we do have a live audience member every single week.
True.
Oscar.
Yeah, shout out to Oscar.
He sits in every single week, and he loves listening.
He does. So. He does love listening. This week's podcast is all about maintaining focus and avoiding distractions. It's kind of back to school season again, so this is definitely something that pretty much everybody, I feel like, deals with when doing homework or whatever you do. Distractions and focus and all that stuff definitely plays into every aspect of life pretty much. So we're just going to talk about that for a little bit on the podcast like we normally do every week. I at least have some tips on how to maintain focus and avoid distractions. And then I also have some concepts to talk about to help you make decisions about how you navigate that. That's pretty much what I have.
I have some questions to ask. You ask yourself some points for maintaining focus, and then I also have a couple points on how to eliminate distractions.
Beautiful. Let's start with your questions. I think that's the most interesting thing to start with.
All right. So, you hear it all the time. Maintain focus, maintain focus, maintain focus. Some people don't even know what focus is, which I didn't really know the definition until I looked it up.
Well, I bet I don't either. Here we go.
And so this is the definition of focusing. And it is the ability to focus the mind on one subject, object, or thought, and at the same time exclude from the mind every other unrelated thought, idea, feeling, and sensation.
Yeah, I feel like that's steep, but fair enough.
So that is the definition of focusing, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And that, like you said, very steep. There's a lot to unpack there, and I'll let you do that on your own if you feel the need. And so another question to ask is, what affects your focus? There's no telling. But here are some things that usually affect your focus. And one of those is not enough sleep. So your brain needs rest, and if it's tired, then it physically cannot focus, which is super important. So sleep good, Also, not enough physical activity will affect your focus. Whenever your muscles are tense because you aren't moving them as much, then that can cause discomfort. And who can stay focused whenever they're not comfortable?
No one.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And then the biggest one is distractions, and I'll get into that a little bit more later.
Fair enough. I've got here some kind of similar, they're not so much questions, they're more so just things to be aware of, I guess, whenever you're thinking about, your process or whatever. And I think that one thing that's important is to consider that not all distractions are necessarily bad things. I'll talk about it at the very last point more in depth, but at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to focus on something 100% for an extremely long period of time.
Yeah.
For example, months, or for some tasks, even hours is a lot, So it's okay to be distracted sometimes, but you just have to kind of be self-aware about not only what is distracting you, but also how much that distraction is affecting you. And also, if you care more about the distraction than you do about whatever you're working on. For example, let's say that you got a birthday party to go to, but you have a paper to write at the same time. Then that birthday party that you have to go to is a distraction from the paper, but which one is more important to you in that moment? You have to make the decision yourself. So that's important. And then, like I said, also, focus, no matter what you do, can't be maintained forever.
Oh, yeah.
Eventually, you're going to get distracted. eventually you're going to break off of whatever you're doing to focus. And that's fine, because if you didn't, you would probably like catch on fire or something, which is not fun, I wouldn't imagine. So,
yeah, totally.
Yeah. And just be okay with the fact that you're not going to be able to maintain full focus for a full, prosperous human lifespan, because that's not how it works.
Yeah, because also like focusing too hard is a distraction sometimes
From things that matter externally, yeah.
which is crazy.
Because you can only really focus on things that are in your own brain. you know, that matter immediately to you.
Exactly.
Probably. I just kind of thought of that on the spot, but
most of the
makes
time,
sense.
yeah.
I feel like that makes sense.
Yeah. But, so, I mean, distractions. We'll talk about them for a minute or so. And it's so crazy because, like, as humans, we're constantly bombarded with, like, new information.
Especially today.
Anytime that you are doing anything, you're constantly getting, like, new information. Even if it's old information that you already knew, then you're still, like, seeing it again and thinking about it again. And so all these things go into play. So whenever I'm sitting here talking to you right now, I have all these thoughts going through my head, and half the thoughts that are going through my head right now I'm not saying,
Of course.
which is crazy. And those are considered distractions. So whenever you get a distraction or like a thought in your head, or you see something that catches your eye or whatever, it's the not going towards it and not progressing back. That doesn't even make any sense.
Backpedaling.
Yeah, backpedaling back from where you're trying to get to, that is whenever the distractions get bad. So distractions happen all the time, and they're subconscious, because, like, I look at this wall that's right behind you, and I'm like, oh, great wall.
Right.
But as long as I don't say that, then that distraction is not hurting me at all, And so that's where you have to draw the line. Distractions happen, but you just have to make sure that you don't get sucked into the distraction and then take time away from whatever you need to be doing that is way more important than that great wall back there.
Right. And that's a really good way to think about it, because even just a distraction on its own doesn't really mean anything, but it's how that affects you that actually matters.
Yeah.
And being able to, I guess, make the decision to not let it affect anything is completely done subconsciously. I never really thought about it that way. That was good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. But imagine in situations where, like, I'm trying to think of a way where you'd be able to, like, physically see that. Maybe whenever you're, like, writing a paper and you get distracted, and then maybe in that section that you were writing, like, there's so many mistakes, like typos or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe that could be, like, an example of that, like, physically done. I don't know if that's how it works. I'm sure there's some research about that, but
Yeah, I mean, I would assume so.
I feel like that makes sense, though.
Just because if you don't put... Sorry. Let me
press mute. That was funny because it sounded like it was, like, from a different zip code. It sounded like it was so far away.
But back to where we were. Yeah, I do think that could totally happen, just because if you're not putting your full focus towards something, well, not even like full focus, but 90% towards your paper, then if you're just giving 10% to your phone or whatever, then you're definitely not going to be able to put as much effort into the actual paper. So, yeah, what if that means typos or mumbo-jumbo sentences or whatever, or maybe it just means maybe there's no typos or no errors or anything like that. It's just not a paper to your personal full potential, then that's still
a distraction. It's a break of focus.
And take that for what it is. If you don't care that you're writing a C- paper, then sure, get on TikTok and scroll for however long you want to while you're writing a paper. But if that is not okay for you and you want an A+ paper, then that's whenever you have to figure something out.
Yeah, have to just cut the distractions out for sure. I think that it's important, too, to think about how it, like you said, it only matters, like, to your standards whenever you're doing things like that. These are just examples that we're kind of coming up with off of the top of our heads here. And there are also ones that more so directly relate to us. But what I just thought of was, like, what happens if you get distracted in, like, a more, like, serious, like, what if a surgeon gets distracted and, like, totally smokes their slice or whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know.
Like, that's some serious stuff.
Yeah, that's like the one chance type thing.
Exactly.
Like the heart transplant.
Exactly. So, I guess the reality of the situation though is that most people's day-to-day life isn't that detrimental if they slip focus for like a second.
Right.
But that's interesting to think about how the distractions that actually happen like in your day-to-day life can actually affect things. I would love to be able to know that easily, like to see like time off task versus that would just be interesting information.
Yeah.
I have to do my research on that because now I got a question mark in my brain.
Yeah.
On distractions. Yeah. But I think, one of my points that I have, one of my tips is to just be cognizant of when you are distracted versus when you're not distracted, and also be cognizant of how much being distracted affects you. Because for me, at least, I can be distracted for like 5 minutes and then get back kind of on task, like task, work myself back there. But everybody can't do that.
Yeah.
Which I think is, I don't really have any like experience with that, but like that would suck. Like you just get like more like fractionally distracted for like a second, and next thing you know, it's like 35 minutes after you got distracted, you're back doing whatever you needed to be doing.
Yeah.
That is obviously bad, pretty much in every context. So distractions, man, they're serious.
Yeah, and what I think is the hardest part about it is whenever you are completing a task, we'll go back to the writing the paper task. That is most likely something that you do not enjoy doing. And most of the time, whatever you get distracted doing is something that you enjoy much more than writing a paper. And so whenever you get sidetracked while you're writing a paper, doing something that you enjoy more than writing a paper, then it doesn't even feel like you're doing anything wrong, because it's just like, oh, well, instead of writing this paper right this second, instead I'm baking a cake or whatever.
Scrolling on TikTok.
Scrolling on TikTok or whatever that is more fun than writing a paper. So most of the time you can't even see it. Most of the time whenever you're distracted, you don't even realize you are until, it's been 35 minutes.
Right.
And then you're like, man, I was supposed to be writing a paper. But now I'm 30 minutes deep in TikTok, You
never know.
Or I just watched 2 YouTube videos in a row and I haven't typed a word yet.
Right.
So things like that, because social media is definitely more fun than writing a paper.
For most people, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So, and I think the people who have more fun writing papers are probably not the people that we're talking to right now.
No, definitely not.
So, and I think we both understand that it is tough to see the distractions, especially while they're happening. But I guess that's kind of why we're here talking to you about it, because there are ways to improve that.
For sure. I think a lot of that comes down to awareness. But I also think a big thing, too, with distractions, especially for people that are in our age demo, the people who are listening to this podcast, is like anything that you have that has a screen is a distraction. And that's not by design of the people who make the screens, but it's by design of the people who make the apps that you use, because that's how they make their money. So I think that it's important to think about that, just because no matter what you do, everything on your phone is going to be a distraction. And it isn't because like you're a member of Gen Z and you can't get off of your phone. It's because that's how those platforms are designed, because that's how they make their money. So you just have to be aware of that. And I have some stuff in the tips section that I'll hold off for to talk about how to try and avoid that as best you can. But yeah, just distraction is designed in a lot of the way that the world works.
Yeah, the way that marketing works.
Exactly.
Is fully based off of distraction. Because, I mean, just whenever you're like, I don't do this often, but sitting on the couch watching TV, I have a football game on. And then next thing you know, Pizza Hut commercial. The point of the Pizza Hut commercial is to take my brain completely off the game that is happening and put me in this world where Pizza Hut is the only thing that exists in this moment.
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, that is exactly where your brain goes. Whenever you see the Pizza Hut ad, you're like, man, Pizza Hut. You're not like, oh, man, my team is down 15 zip.
Right.
And so that is like a distraction in and of itself. But just like how you said, that is how companies make money, and especially like social media companies, that is how they make money. The longer you stay on the app, the more money they make off you, the more ads that they can shove in your face, the more stuff that they can show you, and that makes me think about I can't remember what the doc was called.
Social Dilemma.
The Social Dilemma.
Is that it?
It
is that?
There's a whole documentary that talks just about that, pretty much, and how the social media apps make their money. I would completely recommend it to everyone.
It's on Netflix. It's so good.
Yeah, you need to watch it like 15 times because that'll also get you self-awareness up a ton.
True.
Because I remember I was like even skeptical of even using social media after I watched that.
I can remember that time. That was over the pandemic, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about. That was that long ago. Yeah, distractions, But the way to think about it is like the Pizza Hut commercial that you talked about, or social media. Like for them, eyeballs equal dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way to think about it. And so their job is just to get as many eyeballs wherever they want them to be at whatever time of the day, all the time, basically. So
yeah,
design distractions. Welcome to the world of marketing.
Yeah.
Everybody listen to the podcast. That's all I have until tips.
Yeah, me too.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Probably the biggest thing for me in avoiding distractions, and especially just maintaining focus, is having a routine. I feel like I've probably talked about that in everything that I've ever talked about with a how-to. But sticking to a routine helps a ton. Routines come from goals, and whenever you have a goal to look towards, it's very easy to focus on that because you're pursuing it anyways with the habits that you kind of made and strategies that you're doing throughout the day. So just because you've built your whole life around one kind of end goal, like pyramids here and the goals up here, it's a lot easier to avoid the little distractions that are outside of that if you have a routine, especially if it's built around an end goal. So that's my number one tip.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of piggyback off that. My first little tip is schedule a time to be productive. Basically the same thing as a routine. For me, if I do not have a time written out in my day that I can go and like do homework or edit the podcast or whatever it is, if I don't schedule a time for that, it usually doesn't happen. Just because if I have like an empty block in my schedule, then instead of being like, oh, I have some empty time, let me go do some homework real quick, it's like, oh, I have some empty time, let me go scroll on TikTok,
right,
or let me go to my girlfriend's house, or let me do whatever I want to do more than doing homework, you know? So scheduling a time to be productive, but then also like having a space that you can go. I'll get into that a little bit more later because that's like my biggest point pretty much. But like coffee shops are great if you want to go somewhere to be productive. It's pretty quiet in there. Usually you can go and like get a coffee, maybe a muffin or whatever, have a good time. You look cool sitting at your desk with your AirPods in and
laptop
working on your
out.
computer, you know, like that's a cool place to be. If you go to a school, which most of you probably do, there's a library that is pretty much designed for you to go and do work.
Yeah.
And so I would totally recommend trying that. And then create a space at your home for work. That is like one of the biggest things that I can recommend. If you don't have a desk, you need a desk.
Yeah.
Because it's crazy how much changes mentally whenever you're sitting at a desk. You're just more productive. You're more willing to work. You want to get things done whenever you're sitting at a desk, whether other than like sitting on your bed or like sitting on the couch, you know. And then also like a desk is a place where you can go to get away from distractions too. Most of the time you're set up against like a wall or something, so there's not really much to look at. There's not much to get distracted from because all the distractions are usually behind you. If you're working on like a computer, obviously you have the screen there, but I mean,
there's no avoiding that.
Yeah, I mean you're doing the work.
Put it on D&D, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
But creating a space for work is like one of the biggest ways that I think that you can eliminate distractions.
For sure. And that's literally my second point, is to tailor your space to eliminate distractions. Pretty much everything that you said, I think that you crushed it. I think that the sitting at a desk part is so important because I would imagine, I don't do a lot of work on a laptop, so that's an important thing, but you can piggyback off this for sure. Like I know that I would have a hard time like laying in my bed and then being like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write page 1 of this 4-page paper. There's no way that I could do that.
Yeah, it's
like,
impossible.
There's no way that I could start there and do that. So whenever you sit down at your desk and you turn on your computer and you do all of the stuff that you have to do before you sit down. So like you light the candle or whatever. That's how it is for me at least. You just sit down there and you just zone out and you just go to town. And it's crazy how much more productive you can be in like the same amount of time versus whenever you're other places.
Yeah.
Now I'm also somebody who likes to...
Man, my voice today. I'm fresh off a cold. So,
That's true. He is fresh off a cold.
Whenever my voice cracks, it's not because I'm going through puberty still or nothing like that.
The beer doesn't say it enough. Huh? But I think that I'm also somebody. We talked about this recently in one of my classes actually. Like I'm somebody who once I get started on a project a little bit, then after I get kind of the ball rolling, I can get up from my desk and move around. Like I like to. Sometimes whenever I'm working at my desk, I'll get like kind of stuck and then I'll get up and I'll come in here and I'll like start working on whatever I was just working on at my desk, like in the kitchen or like at a coffee shop. I've done that a ton. I like being able to move around, but I also think that that's because I've been primarily working at a desk for like a year and some change now. So there's also that to consider. But the point is that the space that you're in should benefit the workflow that you're trying to accomplish. And everybody's going to be different. Like if you're somebody who can't handle like background noise, then a coffee shop's going to be a nightmare for you. But if you're somebody who likes that, then the coffee shop's going to be great for you. So it's a case by case basis, and that's important to consider.
Yeah. So my next little point here is close the social media or other distracting apps. Whenever you're trying to get something done, we'll go back to the writing a paper. Whenever you're writing a paper and you're on page 1, and you're just getting started, whenever you get stuck, because you're definitely going to, don't like get on your phone and open Instagram or like Snapchat or whatever. Like those are not places that you need to be whenever you are trying to do something as productive as writing a paper. And so the only thing that I can recommend to you is closing the apps. Like don't even tempt yourself, because whenever I was doing my research, getting my notes ready for this podcast, I read something online that said that people are 50% less productive if their phone is even inside of them. Like if they can just even see their phone. So like instead of, if you're at your desk, instead of being on your computer here and having your phone sitting here, like put your phone in your pocket.
Yeah.
Or like go put it
on the charger
somewhere else that you can't even like be tempted to even grab it, you know? But also like the most distracting thing about cell phones is notifications.
True.
So if you are doing school or doing whatever that you need to be productive, like even if you're cleaning the house or whatever, just turn off the notifications.
Yeah.
Because if you have your phone sitting right here and you're doing some you know, now all of your attention is here.
Yeah, and if you're in the Apple Mac world, it's dinging everything.
Yeah, I
like
know.
It's dinging the phone, it's dinging the iPad,
the watch,
it's dinging the Mac, it's dinging the watch,
everything.
It's dinging it's dinging everything.
It's talking to you through your AirPods.
Facts.
You know,
facts.
But like those notifications are so distracting, because whenever you're working on something and then you see your phone light up, then now all of your attention is here.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just like part of your attention is here. It takes all of your attention to go and look and see what just popped up on your phone. And then that is just like the road that you don't want to get on. So just turn off the notifications, turn off the apps, put your phone in your pocket or on the charger, somewhere where you can't even be tempted to even pick it up.
I like that a lot. My point here is have strategies that help maximize your focus. I'm somebody who's a fan of, I guess they're called like focus sprints, which is like work for 30 minutes and don't do anything else, and then take a break or whatever, but then come back if you need to do more, do another 30 minutes. Basically where like you put your everything on do not disturb, you throw your phone across the room and don't look at it, and you just grind it out for half an hour or however long. Then you just take your break and that kind of thing. Again, everybody's strategies will be different, but it's important that you have at least some kind of strategy as to how you're going to be more productive and avoid distractions, because if you have no strategy, then you're definitely going to get distracted. But if you have some strategy, then you're going to have a little bit of a better chance, because most of the time, if you have no plan, then nothing changes. But if you even have like a terrible plan, at least that's something.
Yeah, at least your mindset is there.
Exactly.
At least you're trying to fix it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I mean, I'm the same way. I like to work for 20, 30 minutes, real hard, get as much done as I can, and then put my hands off, take them off, and be like, all right, I'm going to sit down and do whatever else for however many minutes, and then get back to it. But there are some times where I'm feeling real nice and good, and I'll just bust something out,
The whole thing in one time.
The whole thing,
Yeah,
sometimes.
that happens.
Yeah, sometimes whenever you're feeling real good, you can just get it like that.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of practice and time.
Yeah, definitely. It requires a special breed in order to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like one of a kind whenever it comes to that type of stuff.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
I only have one more, which is to not be too critical of yourself whenever you get distracted. It's going to happen, and it is what it is. There's nobody on earth who's like completely 100% of the time hyper-focused on everything that they ever do. It might seem like that because of how the internet is, and you only see people at their peak or whatever they want to show you. But that's just not how the world works. It's not how humans are designed. Distractions exist in the world, and that just is what it is. It's how the marketing industry exists. We've already talked about this a little bit. So just don't beat yourself up too bad whenever you get distracted, because at the end of the day, it's not that deep.
Yeah.
And that's all I have.
Man.
Distractions.
That was a good show.
Good show. Not bad.
That was a good show.
That was a good show. Thank you guys so much for listening to Caddy Corner episode 42. We are here every single Friday doing this type of vibe of show, and we come back on every single Wednesday, which is audio only, Caddy Corner After Hours. Pretty much, if you could like completely flip the Friday show on its head, that's pretty much what Caddy Corner After Hours is, because it's pretty much the complete opposite. I'll speak for myself. At least I have no idea what we're going to talk about on Caddy Corner After Hours this week, because number one, we haven't yet recorded it as you're listening to this, even though you've already listened to it. So there's an example of how Caddy Corner After Hours works. We just kind of go for it. Thanks so much for listening. We're back every week, like I said. Make sure to like and subscribe, rate and review the show, all that stuff. We appreciate it a lot. It helps the show grow, and that's all we're trying to do around here. I'm Austin. He's Caleb, and we'll see you next week. Peace.